The Alchemist, an honest book review. So in today's video I want to talk to you about the book by Paulo Coelho that I've been reading over the past few days and weeks while actually I was traveling. So right now I'm coming for you from a secluded islands here in the Philippines, to be exact in Palawan, the Linapakan area. So pretty much right now I am the only guy on the island with a few local fishermen, and it actually is quite a cool, let's say, context and setting to talk about this book. So The Alchemist, a fable about following your dream. A lot of people have been recommending it to me. It is like obviously hugely successful book. A lot of people know it. 65 million copies sold. And actually the backstory, I filmed a video on that. For a long time I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and got tons of value from it, reading articles, listening to some audiobooks. But then I started to get back into paperbacks. Those have been one of the first books that I've got in India actually. I bought it, picked it up, I've been reading it on my journey through like bus rides, train rides, reading it next to like temples. So kind of like cool memories also are connected to it. At this point it's a few weeks ago, and I thought I would kind of like give you my review, and I gotta say it has been hyped up a lot. First of all, I liked it, but it's not one of my favorite books. I'll tell you why also. But first of all, let me give you a little summary. Like, it's not going to be a spoiler completely, but it's basically about a boy from a little town in Spain who was sheep, how you call them, basically he was taking care of sheep and he wanted to travel. He always felt like a certain urge and a certain tickle inside of himself to go out into the world and to see the world. And then he basically met a guy who told him that there is a treasure that is waiting for him somewhere in Egypt. And then he basically left his town, went through the Middle East pretty much, through deserts, in the pursuit of his, let's say, treasure it has been formulated. And it's very much, let's say, a very kind of like a little bit mystical vibe. It's as I said, taking place in the Arabic world. There's like camels and like markets, and very much well, I really like the back of it. Dreams are made to be followed, life is meant to be lived. Some books are meant to be read, loved and passed on. I think I'll actually be passing on this book. And I wrote down a few main ideas that this book is talking about and that I do really like. And I think those are kind of like my main takeaways that I want to share with you today. Is kind of like the learning, so let's say the internalization. So for somebody who actually read the book, it will be really cool. For somebody who did not, it will be not really a spoiler. Maybe actually, I mean, it will affect the experience of how you will read the book. But basically I would say the biggest theme of the book is following your mission and your calling in life. Like, the book starts out with just this little boy, the shepherd exactly, experiencing something inside of himself, a certain calling into the world, and it's being talked all the time about the other shepherds, of how the other boys and people in the town live their lives, and how there has been, like, let's say this one girl that he was like maybe somewhat interested in, but he knew that he just has to go, and then for example he moved on and he got to a new town, and then he built, let's say, a little bit of a life for himself there, got involved into a business, and then he was thinking back to his old life, and I could really resonate with that a lot, because for me at this point I've been traveling a lot, and I've been building new lives and new relationships, new people that I met, and it's kind of like at some point you look back at the time and you have like two sides of the coin, and this is also what has been really beautifully presented in this book. On the one side, you think back to the time and you're like, wow, if I would have stayed there, I would be just like everybody else, just living their life and not knowing how much is out there to experience, to feel, to see. But on the other side, it's kind of like, you know, now that I've done that, maybe I could like just go back and just live a cool life, and like just like, now that I achieved something. And there in this book it is also being talked about that sometimes you could, let's say, go back into your old life in a way, but the idea is being presented that it is better to go down while pursuing your treasure, as it is being put in this book. And what is meant by that, just like, let's say, a gift, your gift that you have to share with the world, your purpose maybe you could call it, So it's better to, like, let's say, pursue that and not be successful in it. I mean, sure, maybe be, than to live a life that is maybe not bad, but always live this life in a what if, what could be, and live with regrets, so to say. So the main protagonist, the shepherd, had a few points in his journey where he was thinking about going back, but then it was like, sure, you could go back, but then you would not, let's say, live up to what you can, and not in terms of potential, but just like in terms of following your intuition and following your treasure, your gift, your purpose. The other cool idea that I liked is the idea of omens. So it's basically being talked about omens and the universal language of the world. It's kind of like why he has been like looking out for the Alchemist, another guy, another character in the book. Got a little sick over the past few days here on the island. And I really like this idea of the universal language, and also that, like, let's say a certain like higher power is speaking to you. And obviously, while for some people that might be a little bit like too woo-woo, too abstract, too mystical, and it actually is also for me, I think it's always about how you look at things. Sometimes you can see an omen, like, oh man, it's getting windy, my microphone is a little screwed up, I hope you hear the audio well. Sometimes you see in life some things that have no meaning inherently, but you can give them this meaning. You can see them as a sign and as a direction, let's say, giver, that, like, let's say this thing, this little coral maybe that you see, this little book, like for example, maybe even these two books that I bought in India. I'm like traveling with a carry-on, and just something for a long time I actually wanted to get into like a flow of actually reading books and really starting to consume information again in different ways, and to, like, I don't know, really like put my personal development on a different level, or let's say maybe start to do it in a different way. And I've just seen these two books, like the 5 AM Club and the Alchemist, in this market in India, and they just really spoke to me, and you could say they were an omen to kind of like start going into a new direction in my personal development journey. And yeah, I really like the idea of omens. Next to that, the last thing that I want to talk about is this idea of putting your purpose and your calling above, let's say, just maybe even a potential partner, which is kind of like an idea of that I got from the book of d.lebedev. Maybe some of you are familiar with that, if not, The Way of the Superior Men. A really cool book, kind of like a spiritual guide, you could say. And basically it's being talked about that he met a girl, a woman, Fatima, in the desert, and he really liked her, and he was like, she's my treasure. And he was spending some time with her, and then he still was really considering to go for his treasure. And then he had like the Alchemist, kind of like sort of this, his mentor in this book, and he gave him this perspective that sure, you could spend living your life with her, but then you will also have to live with that certain regret that you will also be somewhat projecting on the other person. This was obviously not like formulated like that in this book. It's not the style of this book, but this is what I personally got from it, is that it's obviously amazing to, and it's definitely something that I want to do, is form deep relationships and partnerships and spend your life with someone, build a family, but it's still very important to follow your treasure, to follow your gift, to follow your purpose. And I think this is kind of like the main message of The Alchemist, to wander in general, and to, I don't know, again, a fable about following your dream. It's very abstract, and I think it's one of those books where you have to go back at some point and read it again, maybe with, for me, with more concentration. It has been like one of the first books I've read in a few months, probably this. Was it the first paperback? Like, I've been listening to a good bunch of audiobooks this year, and it has been a little bit hard for me to concentrate on it, to be honest. Sometimes I like books that are a little bit more set in a more realistic environment, so less fictional and less, let's say, artistically written. I did appreciate it in this book, but for me personally, that made it sometimes a little bit harder to consume. And at first I was just really thinking, like, do I have like issues with my focus right now? What is going on? But right now I'm actually reading a book by Robin Sharma, The 5 AM Club, and this is also a storytelling book. It's telling a story, and I'm super hooked on that. But that by no means says that I did not like The Alchemist. I really liked the experience I had with this book, traveling through India, and for everybody who is maybe wanting to do also something like with a travel journey, or in general, if you, I mean, everybody's life is sort of like, could be a fable of following your dream. So with that, thank you very much for listening to the few thoughts I had on The Alchemist by Coelho.